I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, January the 4th, where the Southern Plains settled for steady money on Thursday afternoon before the board closed, and there was a time there in the afternoon before the board closed that there was some positive basis there. We haven't seen that for a little bit. And so guys went ahead and sold. Consolidated beef producers went ahead and sold. So that was a lot of cattle that they had pooled up. Not sure how hard they had to fight to get that 123, but pretty much everybody pulled the plug south of I-70 anyway at 123. We saw a little bit of trade that way in the north, but you look at the board. On Thursday, February live cattle futures ended up down 30 cents, which was back up a little bit from where they were after lunch at 123.22. April was down 37 at 125.40. January feeder cattle down pretty hard, 142 to close the day at 146.52. March was down $1.50 at 144.45, and we talked on our last visit about how these feedlot conditions are just making it tough to move some of these feeder cattle, and a lot of outfits just don't want any more of them because they're having a hard time dealing with the cattle that they have with the lot conditions that they have. And if it would stay more consistently cold in the northern plains, or if it would dry out some in Kansas, then they would be better off and be willing to take more cattle. But there again, your fat cattle trade in Texas and Kansas, 123, which is steady money. A few in Nebraska, just a very few at 122, mostly 123, and they kind of got the word late. Probably see more after hours trading at 123 in the north. Did see some 195 in Nebraska also. Didn't get to see much at all out of Iowa or Colorado, but 123 will be the number, and pretty much everybody will have to settle for that. Box beef cutout values on Thursday afternoon down 15 cents on the choice at 216.49, down 153 on select at 209.38. Talking to the guys out in the sale barns there, there's more producers that are wanting to sell their calves than there are buyers seeing what's out there to buy, and that's just continuing more and more with the lot conditions. I talked to some of my friends there in Missouri and places, had a lot of rain around New Year's holiday there, kind of made things even more miserable with mud and slop, but now starting to warm up considerably, which that can be a two-edged sword. If you had any deep moisture in the ground there that was frozen, that's liable to thaw out and then take the bottom away that you thought wasn't there anyway in some of your lots. But it will start to dry out some of these lots too if we can have several days, and we're talking up in the 50s and 60s degrees there, fairly up north into Missouri, and that is extremely mild for this time of year. But loving the weather, not so crazy about having to walk out into lots, but just more guys that's got some hard long time weaned calves that are wanting to go ahead and sell those. So continued pressure from the supply, but I think as we've sold off a lot of cows over the last 6-8 months, I don't think we'll see a lot of that supply in our next calf crops. But there was a big calf crop this last time, and as we're cleaning up those long time weaned calves right in the heart of the Midwest, where most of our calves are going to be sold now here for the next 6 weeks or so. You go out into the big ranches out west, most of them have already sold all of their calves and shipped them, and they tend to be worried about their elevation, about the weather, and starting to get calving here pretty quick. And so we're going to see the best offering of calves, and some calves that are still maybe not a year old, of course, but they're yearling type. They've been long time weaned. They've been on their own for a long time. They haven't been backgrounded too heavily. They're not going to be green short yearlings, but they will be yearlings, and won't be the worst things in the world to feed. Probably the best cattle that are out there, and those will be right in the heart of that Midwest eastern Kansas, northern Missouri, southern Iowa, all in that part of the country, eastern Nebraska, some places, and you'll see a lot of big numbers coming out of there over the next 6 weeks, where you won't see that many cattle moving in other places. But let's look at some of your feeder markets on Thursday. Real-time index 145.52. That was afternoon on Thursday. That was down 68 cents from Wednesday's close, but we didn't have Bassett, Nebraska on Thursday, which was really propping things up. And we had several bigger sales in the southern plains, which just naturally are going to have pull your weighted averages down quite a bit. But you look at Pratt, Kansas, pretty good sale there, 2,500 head to get started in the new year. Feeder steers there had a good market report out of Pratt for a change. Down 850 pounds and under, $3 higher. Over 850 pounds, $2 to $4 lower. Feeder heifers steady to $3 higher. Individual quote out of Pratt, 60 head of 806 pound steers bring 157 and a quarter. Very respectful right there. You go to the north central part of Kansas there, Farmers and Ranchers Livestock, Salina, Kansas, had a bigger sale, 3,400 head there. Feeder steers there under 700 pounds, had a higher undertone on them, but not as well tested. Over 700 pounders, $1 to $5 lower, and the most of that decline was on those big steers weighing over 8.5. Just like in Pratt, those cattle will not line up with April board anymore, so they're naturally going to go down. Once they get down here this week and maybe one more, then they'll be they'll trend with the rest of the feeder cattle. But feeder heifers considerably lower than before Christmas there, as they quoted. Joplin's Weanback Special, 6,700 head there. They haven't had a sale since before Christmas too, but they got back in full swing. Also had a primetime video there at the conclusion of the Weanback Special there. Good demand for a lighter weight weaned grass calves, and they had a lot of them in Joplin there. But steady to $5 higher, some $10 higher on some really hard lightweight grass calves. And you guys say, gosh, grass calves, it's early January. Guys in the Flint Hills and places like that are starting to put their grass calves together right now. They'll kind of dry winter them through, won't get them too fleshy, and then they'll have all the cattle that they need. But if you want to turn several thousand head of those good native cattle out, you've got to start putting them together this time of year. There's just not enough numbers of those lighter weight calves coming. But you look at an individual quote out of Joplin, 67 head of 863 pound steers bring 150 and a half. Remember, those be commodity cattle there. That is all you can squeeze out of the market on a high 8 weight right there. And those figures happened in the morning. Later in the afternoon, you see some sales. Joplin gets started early and they get the cattle sold. Some of those sales that were running late into the afternoon after the board closed lower and quite a bit lower on feeder cattle couldn't do that. But 150 and a half on a load of steers weighing averaging over 8.5. That's pretty good market there for your commodity market there. Some other individual quotes. Burlington, Colorado, they can sell calves in eastern Colorado. 75 head of 467 pound steer calves bring $1.95 in Burlington. Look who's back. Bluegrass Stockyard South, Stanford, Kentucky. The Bluegrass Network is DV Auctions' biggest customer out there. Haven't talked a lot about them and haven't included them in individual quotes because they've just been selling a little bit back from there, but they're out east and they've got that freight to get here. But as we start to get into these winter months, you can get yearling cattle out of Kentucky in load lots and big strings of them. And those cattle are still some green there. They've been supplemented some, of course, on the grass, but they've still got green bluegrass, and that gets kind of confusing there at the Bluegrass Stockyards, Stanford, Kentucky. 123 head of steers and one whack through the ring in a sale barn in Kentucky. 837 pounders bring 149.10, and that's pretty darn good. And let's talk about Mitchell, South Dakota. They've got farmer feeders in that country. And I told you can't make anything finish in line with the April board, unless you're talking about giant near beer feeders like they sell around Mitchell, South Dakota. 107 head of 1,056-pound steers, feeder steers at 146. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.